Namaste and welcome. I am Pratim Ranjan Bose and you are listening to my podcast Perspective. In this episode, I'll discuss the fundamental changes that Prime Minister Narendra Modi brought in governance. In his 10-year rule, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has done many good to the country. Mega tax reforms, unprecedented focus on infrastructure and defense strategic sectors, dramatic push to digitization, Make in India, fast forwarding defense hardware and space research programs, energy transition, startup revolution, etc. are part of the list. However, to my mind, the biggest change has come in the way India has conducted its business both internally and externally over the last decade. From my 3-decade-long experience in tracking India's policy making and policy implementation, I can tell this is the first government that truly delivered. It does not mean that all policies were equally effective. What has essentially changed is pace of taking policy decisions and time-bound delivery. Together, they made the BJP government far more accountable and trustworthy, which is reflecting in its astounding electoral success. This is a marked change from the past when India was referred by top editors and policy analysts across South and Southeast Asia as a nation that talks, quote unquote. I shared podium with them in many international seminars. The criticism was not pleasing, but I didn't have much ammunition to counter the blame. Leave aside her international commitments, India was a miserable failure in implementing projects even at home. Who would trust a nation that once didn't have enough toilets? India took 20 years to build a strategic bridge in Assam. It sat on the plan to build dedicated rail freight corridor for years, and the nation helplessly watched anarchic forces chasing away foreign direct investments from Odisha in the name of green protests and civil rights. Thankfully, that era of non-performance is finally behind us. Any realistic assessment will prove India's policy implementation rate, be it in rural electrification or taking piped drinking water to rural households, is at par with the best in the world. During the pandemic, Modi promised to bring out homemade COVID vaccines for 140 crore people, and he did. Naturally, when he promises to make India a semiconductor hub in 5 years, everyone takes him seriously. That takes us to Modi's second contribution. Over the last 10 years, he had been successful in pushing forward the idea of a no-nonsense democracy, where the government cannot be taken for a ride. Modi wants his government to be taken seriously both internally and externally. Internally, that's a marked change from the coalition-era experience, particularly during the Congress-led UPA rule between 2004 and 2014 that gave rise to mobocracy, indiscipline and anarchy. The recent arrest of Arvind Kejriwal, Chief Minister of the Union Territory of Delhi for money laundering, and a huge rupees 135 crore or USD 16 million income tax recovery from Congress, alongside fresh income tax demands of over rupees 3000 crore, are perfect examples of the changed fundamentals in Indian democracy. Both the actions have taken place following due and prolonged legal procedures. According to CNBC, Kejriwal ignored at least 6 summons from law enforcers since October 2023 to cooperate with the probe. Instead, he took recourse to rhetorical politics. Kejriwal thought that the Modi government would not dare to take punitive action against him ahead of the general election. But Modi government did act. Kejriwal was arrested on March 21. A division bench of Delhi High Court first removed his constitutional protection from arrest. On April 1, he was ordered a 14-day judicial custody. Congress was equally brazen in its attempt to take the system for a ride. The party lost income tax exemption in 2018-19 due to extensive use of cash in the electoral process. India Today writes, the IT department served its first notice to the Congress claiming a tax outstanding of Rs 105 crore on July 6, 2021. However, no response was received. A follow-up notice was issued on October 28, 2021, offering the party an option to settle 20% of the outstanding amount. Congress ignored it too. In the fiscal year 2021-22, the IT Commissioner dismissed the Congress's appeal against the IT Department's notice. Further notices issued by the department in 2023 were also essentially ignored. In May 2023, the party appealed against the IT Commissioner's decision in the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal or ITAT. Congress lost the appeal in ITAT and moved to a division bench of Delhi High Court that upheld the order of the Income Tax Appellate Tribunal in March 2024. The court blamed Congress for slipping, quote unquote, on the 3-year-old claim. Congress and Kejriwal's Aam Aadmi Party are now blaming Modi for, quote unquote, murder of democracy. Rahul Gandhi of Congress went a step ahead in threatening officials of punitive action as and when his party returns to power. Does Rahul Gandhi really think that he is speaking in the language of democracy? Some foreign powers, namely Germany and USA, came in support of Kejriwal and Congress and went back home with an earful. Washington Post writes, quote, the US and German officials issued public statements gently reminding India about the importance of the rule of law. The response from New Delhi was anything but gentle, unquote. The Indian Foreign Ministry immediately summoned German and US diplomats for a dressing down in New Delhi. It lashed out at Washington for casting aspersions, quote unquote, and making completely unacceptable, quote unquote, comments about India's internal affairs. According to the American newspaper, quote, it reflected the tough new brand of diplomacy embraced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and cheered by his nationalist supporters, unquote. The truth is, any well-meaning Indian would support the emergence of a strong state that would not budge to undue pressures from outside or inside. Thank you for listening to Perspective. If you like this episode, please share and subscribe. See you next week. फिर मिलेंगे.